What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Game Time Discussions. My name is Cameron Selby here with Emery Cuzzy. Another edition of our positional rankings video. Today we do the fun one, the one that people love talking about. It's quarterback. Uh, there are a lot of names. This could be a historical class in terms of, top 5 picks. 1, 2, 3, 4
Mhm.
is really on the board right now. And we're 6 weeks away, and we already have that kind of intel. Um, Possibly 5 to 6 quarterbacks as first round picks. In our rankings, we only have 6, so ones that are possible first round quarterbacks. We do have 4 honorable mentions as well. But yeah, it's obviously the most exciting position to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one that's been talked about since the end of the season. It's the flashy position. It's got everybody has, nitpicks this position as much as they can. But to get the quarterback of the future, that's what you got to do. There's a bunch of quarterback needy teams. It's also, the fact that there's a bunch of quarterback needy teams at this point where they didn't address it in free agency. So we've got 6 guys, and there's more than 6 teams that could probably take a guy, even a guy that could sit behind a player for a year. So yeah, it's a really exciting class. And I wouldn't sleep on some of these honorable mentions being guys that could, slowly creep into contention.
Right. Yeah. None of those guys are close to being day one picks, but some of them, based on their performances in the combine, have vaulted to possibly being a day 2.
Right.
And usually day 2s that go to right situations, that's kind of where you kind of have those out of nowhere guys.
Mm-hmm.
One being Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina, also Michael Pratt from Tulane, Joe Milton the third from Tennessee, and Sam Hartman from Notre Dame. 4 guys, very productive, different journeys to get where they are. Give us a little bit of a tidbit about each one and why they're worthy of being mentioned.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler is a very interesting story, top to bottom. Goes to Oklahoma, top recruit. One of the guys that both of us were like, we don't really like this guy as a, just being able to be thrown in as the quarterback, not really having to fight for the job, just gets it over Tanner Mordecai, who then transfers to SMU and is on automatic. He improves that team so much, and he struggled. And I think that's because of what the atmosphere was. He struggled in that atmosphere. And other players before him, Kyler, Baker, they didn't struggle in that atmosphere. So I think that hurt his, almost his self-esteem, maybe. Going to South Carolina, though, was honestly pretty good. He is one of the highest arm talents in general. We'd expect that from a guy that was an early great recruit. He brought along one receiver in Xavier Legette. Goes to the Senior Bowl, absolutely kills it. Wins the Senior Bowl MVP. So those types of things, you can tell that he's getting better. Obviously he's probably going to be a late second, maybe early third guy to me. He probably has a 3rd round grade, but he's a guy that, could go to a team. We've talked about this in the past. Go to a team and help them be the backup, slowly improve. When the guy that is the starter leaves, he could step in and be that guy.
I think with him, like we said before, 4 years ago, he was last year's preseason number 1 pick.
Yep.
And he gets benched at the Red River Rivalry for our top pick.
Yeah.
If you don't know who it is, then you haven't been paying attention. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so he had been humbled in a way that he hadn't before.
Yeah.
He had a lot of character issues in my eyes. There's videos of him, people blaming and all that stuff that came out. Obviously, we're all young, dumb, and stupid when we're 17, 18 years old.
Right.
You can mature. You're allowed, a mulligan, so to speak. My thing is, we've seen a lot of guys in recent years. Quarterback, we don't get you got to give him 3 years before you move on.
Right.
It's very quick we're going to move on if you're not the guy. Kenny Pickett, a guy that not only did not produce, but when he was benched, he was very verbal about how unhappy he is in his situation.
Yeah.
And he is not in Pittsburgh because of himself.
Right. Absolutely.
Spencer Rattler, I wonder, because he is going to start out at least a season, but probably two, being a backup to somebody. Can he progress in that role, hold the clipboard, learn, and eventually become a guy that is like a Kirk Cousins who now can be a decade plus
Right.
as a productive quarterback? He has the talent to do that, but does he have the character and the mindset and the intangibles? Is my biggest question.
Well, I think that, him getting knocked down so early in his career probably gives him a little bit of that. Of course, he always thought he was a starter. He was good enough to start on a lot of teams in the NCAA, of course. This is the NFL. You always have to understand that there's a level difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he probably does. I hope that he does, because if he wants to be a good player in this league, he will have to wait. He'll have to wait for either an injury or he'll have to wait for the fact that the guy is moving on. And so that's his opportunity.
Right. So yeah, moving on, Michael Pratt. He's probably the least known of the four of these guys going to Tulane. They were very good. However, he's not on national television every week. Tell us a little bit about him.
So I think Michael Pratt's actually the perfect backup. We talked about that recently, about how like Colt McCoy was a perfect backup. Well, Michael Pratt has that same style. I don't know that he's ever going to be like a consistent starter or a top 20 quarterback by any means. But at any point that your quarterback goes down, this is the guy that you're like, I want Michael Pratt in the game. Experienced, done it. Small school, like we said, all ASC. But he's just consistent, won't wow you in any way. But game manager style player that knows how to win games.
Yeah, and that's ideally what you want as a backup.
Yeah.
So yeah,
for cheap.
There's plenty of reason we've seen last year that you backup is more important than most starting positions.
Right.
Because it can just take your team in a great way or a bad way. If he's the right fit for somebody, it's something ideal for a team to invest early draft capital as a third or fourth round pick, just because of how important it is.
Right.
And then going to Joe Milton, he's one that kind of lit social media on fire from his combine performance. His throwing 70+ yards, flat-footed, incredible arm. Going into Tennessee, he's a guy that like similar to Spencer Rattler, different journey to get where he is. Does he have any kind of possibility of being a mid-round starter?
So the Joe Milton talks and stuff, if you look back to last year and you think about everything we said about Anthony Richardson, that's Joe Milton, but just not as good. It's almost like he just like take the step down. That's Joe Milton. He's also a lot older and he's never figured it out. While Anthony Richardson, when he got in the league, we were like, oh wow, this guy's got it figured out. He can hit every throw, doing pretty good. Great arm, huge arm, shoot. Joe Milton is the wild card to me. He is a absolute wild card because he is the guy that's either going to be a bust on day one. They're going to get him in training camp and he will be a bust. Or it'll be like, oh, this guy has a chance to fight for our starting spot.
Mm.
Like he could go to a lot of places and teams could be like, oh, well, we need to get this guy on the field next year. So we'll figure out what to do with this other quarterback, but we're not going to pay this guy very much, and he can do it. Mm-hmm. And he's a good athlete. He can run. He can move. He's huge. He's a massive human being. He's so inconsistent. I saw a thing that was like a tweet that was like, Joe Milton should play tight end at the next level. He probably could. Like, that's the type of size athlete that we have here, is like a tight end style quarterback. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. So, he's just a wild card to me.
Gotcha. And then Sam Hartman, he's well known going to Notre Dame. He's a guy that I know is a well-liked guy in the locker room, mm-hmm. and he's somebody that has a role in the NFL in the next level. Yeah. Whether it being a starter, probably not. But again, he's going to be 25. He's one of the oldest quarterbacks, but he's still very serviceable game manager as mm-hmm. quarterback.
5 years of 1,950 plus yards. That's a great stat. I mean, we don't like talking about stats because it doesn't show production, or it doesn't show how they will produce at the next level necessarily. but consistency is what you have to talk about here. 950 plus yards, 5 years, consistency, veteran savvy. He's got that little thing where he comes in the locker room. He's okay with being a backup. I'm sure he knows that that's coming, and he's won everywhere he's went basically. So it's really hard to not think like he'd be a great guy to like pick up in the 4th, 5th round, where you're like, we got something in our first quarterback, but this is a great backup, a lot of experience, could help our starter, proceed from there. Could be older than the starter in a lot of cases. And that's a guy that, you kind of want in your locker room to me.
Right. So I know it's not the same exact style of play, but would you say Gardner Minshew is a similar vibe of...
Yeah, the fun guy that goes to work every day, can make it light, like a light feel around everybody. He's, you want to be friends with him kind of guy. So yeah, I completely agree.
All right, so let's kick it off with our rankings. Number 6, he's the guy that's kind of fluctuated, but always been in the 2nd tier. Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. He has had an incredible story. Obviously, he's 24, going to be 24 to start the year. Injuries at Indiana, transfers to Washington, takes Washington all the way to the national championship. He's done fantastic with the hand he's been dealt. The only thing is like the age, and in the big stages, is he able to replicate the production that he has already kind of instilled in a somewhat inflated offense?
So my thing with him, he had four seasons at Indiana where he played 5 or less games. Those were injuries that he overcame. Of course, he's had 2 seasons where he hasn't been injured, which is, okay. But like you said, he's 24. That's a little bit older. It's also a little bit ready, more ready, veteran-esque type of player. My biggest problem with him, and he can throw the ball. He can. My biggest problem is his accuracy. His accuracy at times really, really hurts him. And okay, Washington has an amazing receiver core. You know what everybody talks about on their receiver core? Contested catches. You've got Rome Odunze, great contested catch player, probably the best in the draft. Jalen Polk, great contested catch player. These 2 guys, and he's also got Jalen McMillan, who also can help him. But the other 2 are considered some of the best contested catch players in the draft. It's because they had to try to catch contested catch balls. You know what I mean? Like, there's balls I've seen, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way he just threw that. Triple coverage. Rome Odunze comes down with it. And you're like, wow. Like, did Michael Penix thread that? No. The receiver made the play. And I see a lot of that. Now, at the same time, yes, he had all the production in the world, 36 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, takes his team, Washington, to the first college football playoff championship game for the team, I believe. Absolutely, right? Yeah, since
a playoff.
Yeah, one of the better QBRs we've seen, not necessarily against this group of players, but one of the better QBRs. He's a good player. He's just not a first rounder. And a lot of people are penciling him in as like, he might be the 5th quarterback off the board. He might be the, guy that goes in the mid-20s. And I expect him to. We both do. But I just don't think I think that's too high for his talents.
The reason he's being at 6 is he might be the most likely to... we both anticipate 6 quarterbacks in the first round at the very moment. But if there was one to fall out, he's probably the guy as of now.
He also, one of my big things is he had 8 rushing yards this year. I mean, 15 games, 8 rushing yards. And he's not, so it shows you what type of player he is.
Which again, we got to preface, college football, sacks are negative yards. However, still, we are seeing 1,000 yards rushing from quarterbacks on the regular. So when you take sacks in football, that doesn't necessarily mean, you have a bad line. One of Shedeur Sanders, why he had to go back to school, was his biggest problem is he holds onto the football way too long because he's like, I'll take the negative rush yards because I want to throw for 500. I don't want that interception, or I don't want to, go 3 and out.
Not willing to sling it.
Yeah, he holds on to the ball, and there's covered sacks. I think there's a little bit of that, but not to the extent of Shedeur.
Yeah,
in Penix.
Of course.
It's something he has to work on. I think it just kind of depends on where he goes. I don't think he's the ideal guy to sit now.
Yeah, no, you have to.
Compared to
Yeah,
Nix or McCarthy, who we'll talk about in a moment, those guys are more inclined to. I think they can do it. They're capable of it. But Penix, I think, is the most ready to go from the jump. But is he going to go to the situation that allows him to do that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and is he, when he goes, is he going to be the guy? Also, like that's another thing. Like we expect him to be the most pro ready, probably, but is he going to be a pro ready 27 through 32nd quarterback? And you're going to pick him in the first round, or is he going to be 15 to 20? So that's kind of the conversation, because when you pick a guy in the first round, say he goes in the early teens, you need him to be a good quarterback right now, and I just don't know that he's going to be able to do that. One other thing, I kind of try to do a little bit of pro comparisons with these guys, just like so that there's some idea.
Yes,
he reminds me of Tua. He's a not as good Tua, basically less polished, not as ready to go Tua. Slings it, the same way. Both left-handed, both have the same stature. I was like, whoa, they remind me a lot of each other. So,
and like similar to what you said about the contested catches, right? Tua, you look at the numbers, you look at the box score, fantastic games, right? How often are we seeing Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill have to break their stride and slow down,
right,
to have their ball because he can't put it out there,
yeah,
or it's not an accurate ball to a T. So that's Tua. He's a popular player that gets a lot of positive attention. Good guy, but a lot of times I think he's overblown a little bit because of that. Penix, because of the way he plays, his style of play, the points he puts up, the stats, he's going to be a name that's like, oh, I want this guy.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to separate fantasy football from
real football. Yeah, playing. I mean, Miami had all the talent in the world, and we should have seen them, much deeper in the playoffs, but they lost to Buffalo, and and then had to go play in KC in the coldest game ever. And it's just like, Tua, you could have made this not happen, basically.
Yes. So moving in the top five, JJ McCarthy is kind of a polarizing in the grand scheme of things, because a lot of people, they want to check box scores. He was not the reason that they won the title. He wasn't one of the best players on the team, but he was the ultimate game manager. And he, to me, is just an undefined gem, because we haven't seen the full thing. Right. That doesn't mean he's limited, but that just means he was protected in a way he didn't even have to.
Right. So with him, I really like JJ. I think that, he has a lot of good things, but I see a lot of bad. And I'm not sure. So the NFL world has him a lot higher than the public, I think.
Yes.
And that's my thing.
And that rubs the Twitter folks the wrong way, because it's like, how is this guy going to the top 10? Because that's kind of what's indicated this.
Well, because he's 21 years old and could end up being something pretty awesome. He is in the mold. He fits the mold of the Justin Herberts, the Trevor Lawrences, similar to a guy that we're going to talk about in a minute. And they have like these big, powerful arms. The problem with JJ is those guys have touch. They know how to put arc on the ball on deep passes. He missed almost every one of his deep passes at the combine. He was just trying to throw it as far as he could, I think. But at the same time, like, Nick, like that's the pass though that needs to fall in the bucket. You need to be able to show that you can do that. And my biggest problem with him, watching all his stuff, and I'm gonna tell y'all should go watch his highlights, because so what I do before this is I watch the film, I do all my research, but then of course it takes a little while for us to actually get these shows out and actually record them. So I go back and watch the highlights so I can get a remember of like, oh yeah, that's what I like, that's what I dislike, that's why. Well, JJ McCarthy, you should go watch the highlights, because his receivers made some amazing freaking catches. And they're not JJ McCarthy highlights. They are Roman Wilson highlights. Like, I don't know how they put that on a highlight film and be like, that was JJ. When the guy's jumping over the back of the other player and catching the ball. because he threw it into like
That was the
double
problem.
coverage.
Not necessarily contested catches, but the problem I always have with Mac Jones was when you watch his highlight reel when he got drafted, it's just throwing it to a wide open receiver.
Yeah.
And him scoring a touchdown, and Mac getting the box scoring the credit.
Right.
But it's like, what did he do that a Division II quarterback couldn't do in that specific play?
Right.
He didn't throw it on a dime. He didn't thread the needle. It was just a lob throw, over the shoulder catch.
Yeah.
Uncontested touchdown. And so, similar in that regard, I think had the situation been right, say Jim Harbaugh stayed, he would have stayed. And to me, he would be a favorite to be the number one pick next year.
Right.
But because Harbaugh was leaving, I think he was like, my team's going to get much worse next year. I might regress because of that. And
time.
It's time.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go out on the high note with the players that I went with because Michigan's losing a lot of players. They're going to be a preseason top 5 team that won't be in the top 20 in my eyes. And it's just because of all the guys that they're losing. And in addition to USC and UCLA coming to the Big Ten.
Right.
So they're not going to be a playoff caliber team, but now that it's 12, maybe they'll be on the back end. Who knows?
Right.
But regardless, had he gone with the situation, it would have been more ideal for him to stay. But I think he had to leave based on the hand he was
He's a great athlete. Like, he has that athletic ability. He has that, like we were saying, he's he's cut from a mold. And so that means we see his like ceiling. But I just want to know what his floor is, because he handed the ball off 31 times in a row in one game. 31 times in a row.
Not throwing it in the entire second half of the game.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I've never seen him, have to put the game on his back. What happens when it's like all the pressure's on JJ and it's time for him to step up and be the guy?
Right.
Is he the guy? Because at times I watch his throws, I'm like, he throws this, every ball he throws has the same pace. It always looks the same. It could be a short route, it could be a corner route, it could be a fade, it could be anything. A seam, they all look the same. He has no ability to change how the ball looks. And I have a problem with that, because all the other guys do, and all the good NFL quarterbacks do. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing what everybody else is seeing, but I'm not putting him above even the next guy, who is one of the more disliked guys of like all time to me because of his run at Auburn.
With McCarthy, the best thing you can probably say is he is the best intangibles.
Yes.
And obviously the reason that he's vaulted into the top 10, he interviewed out of the water.
Yeah.
And at the combine process, that's what he nailed at the combine. The teams that love him don't give a rat's ass about the throws that he missed, and the touch, and like all the things you're saying, because of the guy that they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think has vaulted him into the top 10 conversation. It is a reach based on where we would rank him as a prospect.
Right.
But we understand it based on the age and...
Well, the importance of quarterback.
Yeah.
That's
why. The importance of quarterback, and also I think he's the most likely to sit of the 6.
Right.
Instantly.
I hope he does. I really do.
And it probably would benefit him the most to do so.
Yeah.
So, moving on. Another guy that is older. Most starts.
Ever.
Highest completion percentage in his career. All time. Touchdown interception ratio, just insane. All these guys the rest of the way, we're just going to rave about their numbers. But Bo Nix, former Auburn, went to Oregon. His teams have always been good. He's always kept them in games. He hasn't taken teams over the top. However, he's done all the right things that you could ask for, and he's just a really, really outstanding game manager of a quarterback.
Oh, yeah. And I want everybody to think about, the thing on that screen that matters the most to me. All those stats are great. The 15-1 ratio of touchdowns, interceptions, great. The QBR at 91. And that is awesome. Mm-hmm. That is just freaking awesome. Of course, everybody's going to say the biggest problem with Bo Nix is a lot of his passes were short. He had 900 yards of short passes. Well, I'll tell you what. He had 900 yards of short passes and 3,600 yards of everything else. Like, he's fine. He can throw the ball. His arm talent, maybe he doesn't have the arm strength to be elite, probably, but he has all the accuracy. And I'm gonna read he was first in adjusted completion percentage at 85.4%. That means 85.4% of his passes hit the mark, and his receivers dropped them, which is actually true. Troy Franklin had a 10% drop rate, one of the highest in the NCAA.
So you're saying that his 77% completion percentage could have been higher?
But yeah, exactly. Yes, it absolutely could have, and
incredible.
His one thing also, he's really great under pressure. He has ability. He's not elite at running or anything like that. He's really good at feeling the pocket. He had the fastest time to throw at like 2.4 seconds, which JJ McCarthy had like 2.9, because this guy's a little bit older, so he processes faster. He's pro ready right now to help a team. Now, he's still a reach in the mid first round, but if this guy comes in and he's like, hey, we need you to play, he's ready to play. My biggest thing, I kind of comp him to Baker. He reminds me of Baker. Mm-hmm. Good-ish athlete, able to make plays with his feet, not going to, kill you with his feet, basically. And he's a winner. He's going to get the ball to the guys and let them do their thing. And he has a same throwing motion as Baker. It just kind of reminds me just of Baker. But he's the reason Oregon was Oregon. Like, I loved watching his pro day, because his pro day, they talked about how much he changed the atmosphere that was going on in Oregon, who hadn't been as good for the last few years, So
the biggest thing with him is just age.
Yeah.
And his limitation on just overcoming a bad situation, to me, might be the lowest of all of them. If he goes into a situation where there's just no receivers, no established offensive, coordinator / coach, I think that's a situation for disaster for him, and he might be that same team 2 years later will be taking a quarterback in the first round, or overspending on somebody in free agency, because it'll be very clear very soon. I mean, he's already 24. He's played 5 college seasons as a full-time starter. He's closest to his ceiling than any other player, because I think all of them have higher ceilings, but he is already closest to his floor, so you know what you're getting.
Yeah, he's very safe. Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of people have compared him to Drew Brees in the style of play, which is why there's a lot of rumblings of Denver. But if Denver doesn't take him, I'm not sure who does.
Right.
Him and Penix are really close in the sense of, I don't know which one of them might possibly fall to the end, or maybe even out of the first round.
Right.
But I feel like a Raiders would be more inclined to take a Michael Penix than they would a Bo Nix. I'm not sure if that's something that you would do, but I think that's the
no, I would not do
type
that.
of that's the type of guy that they want. They want a personality, and Michael Penix is the guy that has the personality. Bo Nix is more of a boring, just kind of gets his job done, and that's it.
That's fair.
Again, that's not what you would do, but that's what I think the vibe that your team typically goes. If they did go quarterback at 13, I think they're more inclined to go with Penix. But again, Bo Nix, wide range of outcomes in terms of, I guess, where he'd go in the draft. But if he lands in the right situation, he could very well have the second or even most productive career.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's. That being said, one thing is certain: we could have 4 quarterbacks in the top 5, but one thing that's pretty certain to us at this point is the first, second, and third pick will be quarterback.
Yeah.
We'll start off one of those, Drake Maye out of North Carolina. He is the least sexy of the picks because Caleb Williams is the bona fide, superstar. Jayden Williams is the Heisman winner. Drake Maye went to UNC and just kind of middle of the pack. Give me your take on him. Walk us through a little bit of what some people might not know, because he's just kind of a little bit of an unknown in the public eye.
So I think we need to talk about him in the start of like this season versus 2022. In 2022, Drake Maye was a different, otherworldly player, and everybody was like, that guy should probably be a top 3 pick last year. But as you think about it, it was even more so like he should be the number 1 overall pick, because he just did everything right. Then his OC leaves, his wide receivers leave, and we see what he has to deal with under adversity. Now, I'm going to say this. 2022, Drake Maye was not perfect because he did not win in the big games. And a lot of people want to get on to Caleb Williams about not winning in the big games. Well, there's a big difference. Caleb Williams is in the Pac-12 where he's in the Pac-12 where there's a lot of good teams, and it's possibly the best Pac-12 we've seen in a long time. But Drake Maye is in the ACC, which is one of the worst conferences we've seen. So I think that, that's a big preface. I have a little thing here. Inconsistencies, right? 2022, he lost the last 4. In 4 games, lower than 58%, including a 44% against Clemson. Okay? This is the guy.
National championship Clemson. This is
regressed Clemson. And then in 2023, lost the last 2 with no bowl appearance. Okay? So in his 2022, in 2022, he was 0 for 2 against top ranked teams, any ranked team. He went 44 of 77, which is 57.1%. And then in 2023, he was 1 for 2 against ranked teams at 51.4%. So I guess personally, we're going to make the comparison. He's Justin Herbert. Well, Justin Herbert also has issues winning games in big games at big times. And I guess the reason he's at 3, because it's so close, you have to find something that breaks the tie, is can he be consistent? Can he win those games? That's my biggest problem with his play.
Yeah, something similar what I mentioned earlier with JJ McCarthy. If he did come back, there'd be a chance that he'd have the opportunity to play as a top pick. And there's also the possibility, because everybody left, including his coach,
right,
that he could regress and be considered more of a risk. Drake Maye didn't fall in the draft in terms of capital, but he fell in terms of, I'm not sure if
I'm not as confident.
Yeah, I'm not as confident. I'll take him because he's talented. He's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
With the off-kilter throws that he makes, improvising. However, like you said, big moments, coming up shorter. Obviously, North Carolina is not Oregon or Ohio State, Alabama. So you're not playing with the caliber of players, but you still need to be at least serviceable, especially when ACC was clearly the worst of the Power 5 conferences this year. And also another thing I wanted to point out in terms of what he had to be against this year, he had to have in the regular season, 36 times did he have to face a 3rd and 11 or longer. And when you are doing that consistently, that also will deflate the numbers that we're not seeing. So you're going to have lower completion percentages. You're not going to have the long sustained drives because you're consistently having to overcompensate for what you didn't convert on 1st and 2nd down. So a lot of that is coaching. It's not just them. It is a lot on him as well.
Right.
It's something to point out when we're talking about numbers, because obviously when we get to Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams, they have numbers that are video game-like. He clearly doesn't have the numbers they do.
Right.
And it has a little bit to do with that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, it has a little bit to do, though, also with what he did on 1st and 2nd down, of course. We don't know every situation, but I don't want to. I just harped on him being a bad player. It's not that at all. He is an amazing talent, because his arm talent is the best in this class. Like, honestly, he can make every throw, anywhere, pace, arc, all the things. He's got it. I just need him to do it at the times where he needs to do it. That's my thing. He had a really good running back in Amari Hampton, so the running game was good for North Carolina. It's just I wanted to see him take a step where he won those big games because he didn't in 2022. And that's actually the exact reason he didn't. He's not number 2 in this.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and also it's like he's a top 3 pick.
yeah,
At some point, when you get so high in a ranking, you have to start nitpicking a little bit.
Mhm.
We're going to talk more about when we get to Caleb Williams, the negatives of him,
right.
rather than the positives, because the positives are just so eye popping and overstated at some points that it's like, well, he's not the perfect prospect.
No.
So, but I do have a good question about Drake Maye, but I'm going to let us get through and we'll do it in our outro.
Okay.
But let's go to Jayden Daniels, LSU Heisman winner. Incredible numbers, just out the charts.
It's crazy.
With what he did, one of the highest QBRs ever.
The highest. I think it was the highest. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 3 of them this year were
above
up there,
90,
above
which is
90.
crazy.
So, 95.7 QBR, just the highest PFF graded quarterback. He is 23, late bloomer a little bit, but he's risen to the top for a reason, and he's made 2 first-round receivers. He hasn't performed in spite of them. He made them the receivers that they are.
Yeah, I mean, he made them better, and just being able to be an 11th player. So, like, I always talk about that. Like, when I played as a linebacker, you get a quarterback that is a real, true run threat. It's like, okay, now the other team has enough players to block us. Because when they run the ball, you normally have an extra guy or half a guy that can make the play. When Jayden Daniels becomes the running back, it's like, crap. Because now they've got even numbers, and it's like, here we go. And it's why the NFL is changing so much to where the quarterback is such a big part of the run game and is more mobile. 1,100 plus rushing yards. That's awesome. That's great.
Including sacks.
Yeah, including sacks. Yeah, he probably has 1,200 plus, but PFF's highest grade for quarterback, one of the highest grades we've ever seen for quarterback. But the real thing I like to talk about is he had the highest deep pass grade. And for a guy who isn't and I personally also don't consider has the best deep arm, to have a by far highest deep pass grade, that shows a lot of like
versatility.
Yeah, and him being able to be like I don't have this, but I'm putting this ball in the perfect spot. I'm throwing this with anticipation rather than, that kind of stuff too. He's got all the awards. Yeah. I mean, it's all over that board. But he's absolutely deserving of being number 2.
A lot of people give him the outlook of Lamar Jackson being able to thrive as a dual threat.
Similar,
I think
but different.
He had a better arm.
Absolutely, he was
better
polished.
Like maybe straight line speed, they might be similar, but Lamar I think is a little bit more dynamic as a runner.
Yeah,
but Jayden is more dynamic as a passer.
Yes,
and with Lamar, the questions that we had and the reason he dropped 32 wasn't because no one believed in him being able to be a dual threat quarterback. Is that he didn't make enough big time throws, and he struggled with consistency, trailing from behind, etc. He still has those problems as a 2-time MVP, but he's maximized his ceiling, which is what you expected. With Jayden Daniels, there's much higher floor because of the arm, and because of the way the NFL is playing now with emphasizing dual threat quarterbacks. I think it's the ideal situation for him to come into the league too.
Yeah, he's much more polished as a passer. Of course, we can always make the conversation that he had 2 elite receivers, but like you said at the beginning of this, the receivers were elite, and he made them better.
Yes,
and that's something that
this wasn't 4 first-round receivers, Ohio State, and with C.J. Stroud, throwing to Marvin Harrison and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Emeka Buka that decided to stay. He was an all or 5-star.
Yeah,
like
top
you're throwing to 4 first-round receivers before we even see them be productive. And Jackson Smith and Jigga.
Yeah, the whole group.
So the whole group is just incredible. So with C.J. Stroud, because Ohio State has always had those great receivers, a lot of quarterbacks underwhelming the pros. And with C.J. Stroud, our biggest knock was just, can he do it without that?
Yeah.
And he goes to a situation without dynamic receivers. And
Does it? Yeah.
So, all right, question answer.
Mm-hmm.
So with Jayden, I don't think it's the same situation as like that.
Well, if he goes to Washington, he'll get some pretty good receivers. Mm-hmm. If he goes to New England, I guess we'll see.
Yeah,
because that's a really big swing.
Exactly.
To go to New England and have to figure out how to get those receivers to be productive.
I'll get right to it because it has to do with Jayden versus Drake. Because right now we know Caleb is number one.
Absolutely,
and he's going the first pick. Washington's on the clock at 2, and some people are split on where they're going. Who is more equipped, in your eyes, to succeed going to New England?
Oh, it's definitely Jayden Daniels because of his legs. You can make an offensive line better with your legs. You can make a team a lot better with your legs. That's a big part of why we're moving into this world, is because when plays don't work and you are a pocket passer, you don't work.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Now, I'm not saying that Drake is a pocket passer. I know he's got moves and stuff, but Jayden is actually able to get out of the pocket and make spectacular. There's always a one play away from scoring a touchdown with Jayden Daniels.
Yes.
You know, I think personally Jayden makes more sense. And that's also why he's number 2, because I think he is more situation proof than Drake is, personally.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's a little bit of a mixed bag because Jayden Daniels, late bloomer, transfer from Arizona State.
Right.
So there's a little bit of like, was this just all the marbles fall in the right place, and he just had his one good year, versus Drake Maye, which is like, we don't know if we've seen the best of him. And Jayden Daniels, we're like, oh, we just saw what could be the best of him. So it's two very, very different like situations that they're coming out from. So it's interesting for teams and how they approach that when we come to the second pick of the draft.
Well, we talked about Marcus Mariota going to Washington, Cliff Kingsbury being there. It makes sense for it to be Jayden Daniels, and that's kind of why we mock him there. If it made more sense for Drake Maye to be there, and like the situation made more sense, we would put him there, even if we don't have him at 2. It's all about fit in the draft and the mock drafts and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm confident that Jayden should be 2. He's a little bit older, but he's just electrifying, So,
So,
here we go.
Caleb Williams, your newest Chicago Bear quarterback.
Yeah.
Not a lot to say. He's been one of the most incredible talents we've seen play college quarterback. Slight regression in his junior year, but it was by default because of how great his sophomore year was.
Yeah.
And 2022, he won all the awards that Jayden Daniels basically won in 2023, and was even better. Problem is that in some people's eyes, he didn't win the biggest games, but at the same time, he couldn't score 50 every week.
He did that at, like the 2022, he had just turned 20 years old at the end of that season. Like he was just turning 20, and he was the Heisman winner, the Maxwell winner, the Walter Camp winner, Sporting News Player of the Year. Like, how do you get better? Like, how do you just and that's the thing too. Like, you look at this season, and he had 5 interceptions, right? He had 5 interceptions last year. He's 72 touchdowns to 10 interceptions in the last 2 years. Okay, 3 of them came to Notre Dame. His one game that he had a bad game in all 3 of his years since Oklahoma. When he was at Oklahoma, didn't really have a bad game. Goes to USC, doesn't have a bad game until this year, midway through the year, he plays Notre Dame and has 3 interceptions and 199 yards. In every other game that they lost, he had 322.4 yards. It's pretty good. He had 2 interceptions in all of the other games this year. 2. I mean, he doesn't turn the ball over. So my biggest thing is the conversation is, oh, well, I don't like Caleb Williams. He doesn't show up in big games. Well, first off, his defense wasn't as good this year. The year before this year, he had a better defense. He had similar playmakers. He took a little bit of a step back. Drake Maye doesn't show up in big games. Why is he not getting criticized the same way Caleb Williams is? Well, it's because of the pedestal. Yeah. It's where he is, and it's fine.
When you're already at the top of the mountain,
people
it's so clear.
Oh yeah,
it's like people only want to tear you down.
Of course,
like Marvin Harrison isn't going to perform at the pro day.
Yeah.
Nor did he do so at the combine. and people are trying to tear him down like he's got character issues. He was literally told by NFL teams,
Don't do it. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
I tell them
Because
the same thing.
it gives people a reason, and then even listening to those teams, he still is getting criticized for, oh, he's a diva. He's gonna.
No.
With Caleb, there is a little bit of diva with him.
Yeah.
With some of the stuff he's done. Play on the field wise, the only thing I can really say is sometimes he tries to improvise too much.
Too much, yeah.
But that doesn't. Sometimes you want that on your. It depends on the style of play. If he goes to Sean Payton, it's probably not a match made in heaven. But if you're going to basically any other situation,
yeah,
non Bill Parcells, Sean Payton, Bill Belichick tree, like he's trying to make plays and win games.
Yep,
he's trying his best, and more often than not, it's going to work out. Brett Favre is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and he has like 100 interceptions more than the next worst guy. Because he was like 25 touchdowns and 20 picks in his best years. But it's like you're living with the good and the bad. Caleb Williams, far better at
protecting the ball.
Yeah. And so that there's nothing left to say other than Chicago fans not being upset that Fields isn't your quarterback. It's time to reset.
I actually have one thing to say about that. And I hope Chicago fans are looking at this and watching this because at the end of the day, we may think whatever we want about Justin Fields, but the NFL decided that Justin Fields was not worth a second-round pick or a third-round pick. He is worth a conditional fourth-rounder at best. That tells me everything I need to know about what Justin Fields is to the rest of the NFL. He did not get the deal that he was expecting. He did not get extended. And now he has to go fight for a spot with a veteran who's pretty freaking good at football. And he might not win that spot. So, I don't know.
I am completely on board with Justin Fields. Went to a bad situation. Chicago screwed up. Did not give him the opportunity to shine. But he also, while on the field, did not do enough to keep this job. And the Chicago Bears having back-to-back years with the number 1 overall pick, you cannot pass on an elite quarterback twice.
Yeah. I really do. I wish we were doing like shorts already and like things like that so we could take this section about us talking about Justin Fields and put it out there because I feel like Chicago Bears fans just are so used to losing. And it has been so long since they had, they played in the Super Bowl in what, 2008? 2006? Okay. Against the Colts. And that's like the last time I really hear anything. They don't have an elite defense. They didn't have an elite defense before this year. They didn't have an elite quarterback that could do the things. And they're just so okay with like, oh, well, we have another quarterback that's going downhill. And I'm like, stop. Just go get the best quarterback in this draft class and go win 10, 11 games next year.
Building a team-wise, there's nothing you can do to convince me that going Caleb Williams first, even if it was the exact same player. Say Caleb Williams wasn't the prospect that he is, and he's like Drake Maye. And that's all that there is. Risk, but talent's there. But, it's an unknown. But Justin Fields is also the unknown. You still get 4 more years with this guy, with all the cap space in the world. You're about to pay a guy that has not proven himself that you're hoping will.
What would that deal look like? Because I think it's about $18 million, $20 million a year to pay Justin Fields for 2 years, probably.
Annually?
Annually.
Right now?
That's what I thought.
I mean, yeah.
If they would have paid him, that's what they would have gave him. Caleb Williams is going to be worth 8 max for 4 years. Like 8 at any point during 4 years, I believe. Yeah, come on now. Come on. $12 million extra dollars to get the better player and take the chance on a guy who has no issues except for, his dad kind of talked about maybe wanting to get a stake in the team. And he sometimes says the wrong things to the news. He cried to his mom, whatever. 7-5 last year, but had 300 plus passing yards in all of those games. I don't see the issue.
Yeah.
So
It's again, we're just trying to nitpick because he is the number one pick. We're not on the first pick in the draft anymore at this point.
no,
And we're
absolutely
6 weeks removed from
Yeah.
the start of the draft. So that being said, we are wrapping up our fun position quarterback rankings. I It's one of the positions where I think there will be no movement from now to our final rankings.
Yeah.
Maybe it's we mix and match our confidence levels of who goes where, how high the fifth and sixth quarterbacks go, but 1 through 6 is pretty solidified, and then the next four are pretty solidified after that.
Yeah, I agree. This is you know, as much as I love ranting at, Chicago fans, you know what the bad part is? They get the benefit of it. At the end of the day, they get
You're
to
winning.
Yeah, you get to complain all you want, and then you get to go win 10 games. Oh my gosh, they're gonna get it. They could win the division. They could go from worst to first. I mean, the odds of that are possible. Detroit is the
Detroit
only
was not
issue.
in this division, I
Yeah.
would pick them to win.
Exactly. They could win 11 games. And no one should be surprised, but they will because they're the number one overall pick. Well, this isn't their pick. They're number 9. And they have a lot of pieces. They have a good offensive line. They have a good Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. They have a solid defense. Montez Sweat was one of the biggest pickups. They have good linebackers that they overpaid, whatever. And they have another draft pick. Like,
I would much rather
goodness.
be a Chicago Bear fan than a Dallas Cowboy fan right now. Or a Raider fan, for that matter.
Yeah,
you could feel sad with me.
Okay.
So.
I mean, we're not going to win 11 games. I feel better about us, but we're not winning 11.
Shit,
So
we will not either.
No.
It's okay.
But we appreciate y'all coming and checking it out and being a part of it. Go into the description. We've been tweeting a lot. We're going to get on Instagram and TikTok and all those things soon. Discord is open and ready to go. So yeah, come be a part of the community, join the discussion, and we really appreciate y'all being with us.
Yeah, again, we're about halfway through our positional rankings. We're going to finish that series out before the end of the month. Have our mock draft 2.0 coming out next week. Please like, comment, subscribe. Emphasize on comment. We wanted to start discussing with you guys, going back and forth a little bit. We appreciate the views, the content, the likes that we've received thus far. But on top of building on that, we want to start discussing and start getting into the flow of things because the community is the biggest reason that we're doing this. We're not doing this just to ramble on and get clickbait stuff. We're trying to build a fun community to talk football with for years to come.
Yeah, me and Cam can talk football whenever we want. We want to see what other people have to say. We want to see what, opinions, someone that actually lives maybe in Chicago has, sees it every day. Because I only, Cam watches Dallas all the time. He knows exactly what they're doing. He probably knows the ins and outs of their, who's getting pay cutted, their janitors and stuff. So he understands that at a much deeper level. We want to see what other people who are fans of certain teams know that we're missing because we can't get all the information. We're not Daniel Jeremiah or Mel Kiper trying to figure out this draft process. But like we said, we really appreciate y'all being with us, and we hope that we can grow.
Yeah, come and subscribe one more time. Check out our other videos and look out for more to come.
Y'all have a good one.